So I have to just tell you, I don't know why. Sometimes something comes in my mind and out my mouth, and then afterward I go, why did I say that? So a few weeks ago I said to Betsy, I said, we've done the 5 principles and we've done all this stuff. I said, but we haven't talked about the values. I said, I think I'd like to talk about the values. I'm going to do a different value every week, right? So the first value is spirituality. Thinking, what the hell am I going to do about spiritual? And then I get an email from Kenneth, and he says, exactly what are you going to be talking about? And I was like, spirituality. I've been doing a lot of research. Spirituality. So why did I even decide to do these values? Because I thought compassion. Okay, I can do prosperity, inclusivity, integrity. Yeah. So, but many years ago, like in the early '60s, I took a class one summer. I was off from my college. I went to Bridgeport. That's where I went to college, and I was home in New Jersey. And I took this class. It was like a social something or other about omnibus. I don't know, but it involved a lot of field trips, like to New York City early in the morning, to the flower market, to the meat market. It sounded interesting. But one day we had an auction. We decided we're going to have an auction, and we were talking about values. And values are those things that we hold dear to us, that we really put in our life because they're so important to us. So we were all given money for this auction, and the teacher had a list of values, and we were told to bid our money on the values that were important to you. So there were like these great values that people were bidding on, peace and love and serenity and prosperity and all of this. But there was this one value, because he had a list of them so we would know what to put our money on. And believe it or not, there was a value, and it was being taller. Seriously, being taller. Now, at the time, I was 5 feet and 1/4 of an inch. And what I wanted to do more than anything else in the world was to be a stewardess, which they were called back then. They were called stewardesses. And they always looked so great. And they got to travel, and they had those cute uniforms. This is early 60s, folks. So before all this, equal stuff and everything else. And you had to be 5'2". So you actually had to have a height. You had to have an age and height. And I was 5 feet. At the best, 5 feet and 1/4. So I took all my play money, and that's where I put all my money on. I was the only one who even did that. So I won it. Not like I won it. I couldn't be a flight stewardess. No matter how much money I spent, I could never be 5'2", because it wasn't 5'2" in heels, it was 5'2". So this thing about values, we all have our values, the things in our life that are important. And these are unity's values. So we talk a lot about unity being spiritual, not religious. So, when I don't know anything, or most of us, nowadays, we can go to Google or AI. So I thought, what is the actual difference between religion and spirituality? Well, I come from a 12-step program, and there it's, religion is for those people who are afraid they're going to go to hell, and spirituality are for people who have been in hell. I can relate to that. I've been in hell. But I thought, what does AI say about this? Because AI, everyone says AI is so important. Well, AI has a lot to say about it, which I am not going to bore you all. And because I'm a very visual person, I made a chart. Because it was just, AI is just too smart for its own brains. It just gives you so much information. It's like overkill. So some of the differences, and I decided to compare the two and see where unity fell on these two columns. Because, is unity a religion? Is it not a religion? Is it a church? Is it not a church? It's been around a long time, and they still don't know what they are. So, according to AI, spirituality is personal and subjective. Spirituality is a deep personal experience varying from individual to individual. Well, that's what unity believes, right? So that means that unity is spiritual. But religion is organized and structured. Religion involves a set of beliefs, practices, and often a community or institution. Well, unity falls under that. I mean, this is a community right here, right? We have a community. We have a set of beliefs, our 5 principles. You don't have to believe them, but unity does have a set of beliefs, and we have practices. You know, affirmative prayer is a practice. Lighting the Christ candle is a practice. All of that are practices. So I thought, well, unity could be both. And then spirituality, one difference is focused on inner exploration. So spirituality involves introspection, self-discovery, and developing a sense of connection with something transcendent. So what is transcendent? It is something beyond us. It is something beyond explanation. And religion has shared beliefs and rituals. Religious communities share common beliefs, practices, and rituals, and often adhere to strict, specific doctrines and scriptures. This is where unity doesn't fit with religion, is that we don't adhere to anything that closely. And then spirituality may or may not involve religion. A person can be spiritual without adhering to a specific religion, or they can be spiritual within the framework of a religious belief system. I was one of these people, I always thought, religious people are religious people, and spiritual people are spiritual people. But, you know, I know a lot of religious people that are very spiritual. I have friends who are very devout Catholics. You know, they go to church every Sunday, they do confession, they do the whole thing, and they are some of the most spiritual people I know because they have this great connection with a power greater than themselves. And they just choose to utilize that part of it. In fact, I was at a retreat, and it happened to take place in a Catholic monastery or something. And one of the things was a service at 5 o'clock with a priest. And all my friends were going, so I thought, I'll go. I've been to Catholic services before. And it was one of the most spiritual experiences I have ever had. It was so powerful. The music was powerful. The priest's message was powerful. And then, you know, afterward in a Catholic service, you go up and you get whatever they call that. Thank you. I wasn't brought up Catholic. But they now, years ago in Catholicism, you had to have done your confession and done all of that to get communion. But now they say, you know, come up or you can put your hands like this and the priest will bless you. Well, I was so ecstatic after this fabulous, wonderful, deep spiritual experience. I was going up, you know, I was ready to but I crossed my hands because I thought, I know what you have to do in order to do that. Anyway, so I have found a lot of times in a very religious place an unbelievable spiritual experiences. And religion may involve a hierarchy of leaders. Well, unity doesn't have a hierarchy of leaders. In fact, that's one of Unity's things. There's really nobody. The leaders change constantly, so there's no hierarchy. But spirituality may include practices like meditation, prayer, and mindfulness, and religion may include practices like prayer, worship, and sacraments, and meditation, because, for instance, the Catholic Church does a lot about meditation. They call it something different. So I've always gone from, am I religious, am I spiritual? And then when someone says, you know, what do you believe? It helps to have the bulletin. At least you have a gyp sheet, because when someone says to you, where do you go to church and what do they believe? What do you say? Oh, I go to Unity. Unitarian? No, Unity. Okay, so what is unity? Okay, can we go talk about the weather? What is unity? So I go right away to the 5 principles. Oh, unity believes there's one presence, one power in the universe. That presence, that power is good. I believe there is that divine within every person, that we are all divine. I believe that our lives are based on our thinking, our consciousness, that I live life from the inside out, not from the outside in. And I believe in prayer and meditation. And I believe that it's not enough to just believe these principles. I have to act these principles. So I believe in all of that. So I'm good. I'm unity, right? But I have to tell you, sometimes I'm not that unity. For instance, affirmative prayer. So unity believes in affirmative prayer, but I have to tell you that the night I had my spiritual experience, it was not an affirmative prayer. And I have heard of many people who have had unbelievable experiences, and it hasn't been affirmative. Because when you are in a dark night of the soul, when you are at the bottom of wherever you can go, you do not have positive thoughts. You don't have them. It's very hard to say, I am the light of God, when you feel like you are a piece of you-know-what. It's very hard to say that God is within me when you don't feel that there is a God, or that God is anywhere. It is very hard to say that God is within and I am light and love, and because Myrtle, who did do affirmative prayer, already believed all that stuff. But for many people, they don't believe that stuff. So it's hard to do affirmative prayer. So my first prayer, because I didn't believe in anything, and I think I've said this, my first prayer was, God, prove yourself to me if there is a God, and kill me. And then I'll know there's a God. That was my prayer. I had nothing at all to do with anything that had anything to do with unity. And what I experienced that night was unbelievable, and it was love, and it was the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. So I think sometimes that any kind of set things with spirituality is whatever your spirit leads you to believe and do, so that you can have a closer connection with God. And that can come up in many ways. It can come up going to Mass and having communion. It can come up with affirmative prayer. It can come up, I went to I love gospel music. I mean, I love it. I have playlists. I listen to it a lot. And I went to a gospel thing in Miami years ago, and it was this singer that I loved, and a friend of mine told me about it, and she got me tickets, and I went, and it was fabulous. The music was great. We're all on our hands. We're dancing. We're clapping. Everything is good. I don't believe anything that these people believe, but I am filled with the Spirit. I mean, I am dancing. I feel the Spirit. I got the Spirit. You know, and then the minister says, everybody who's feeling the Spirit, come on down front. So I turned to my husband, I said, let's go. You know, so we go down front. I don't know what I'm going down front for, but I got the Spirit. I know it. I have felt God, and I am doing whatever these people say. So we go down front, and they take us into a room. And then they start talking about all this stuff, about sin and going to hell, and how we were born with sin, and how if you're not baptized, you're doomed, and that, you know, anyone who hasn't baptized is going to hell. Anyone who hasn't died by the blood, who doesn't believe in that they've been reborn by the blood of Jesus, is going to hell. I mean, hell, hell, hell. And my husband and I look at each other and we're like, we are in the wrong place. So we kind of start sneaking back, trying not to be noticed, and sneak out the door before someone comes and grabs us and finds out I haven't been baptized. Oh my God. So, you know, but I was so led by the Spirit. So these rules and regulations of religion sometimes affect us spiritually. So another quick story. I had a member of my church in Savannah who was a big unity person, had been for years. She was a licensed unity teacher. She was one of our prayer chaplains. She was a elderly African-American woman. We're talking Georgia. So I don't know if any of you have ever lived in the South, but some of the Baptists in the South are pretty extreme. So her family were Baptists, Southern Baptists, and they lived in the rural Georgia, and they were having a service for her there in their Baptist church. We had one at Unity, but they were having one there. So I go to this little church with a cemetery in the back. I am the only white female. I am the only of two white people. And one of the pastors, or a bunch of pastors, allows me to go up with them onto the stage, but I couldn't say anything, right? Because A, I was a woman. It's mostly I was a woman. I don't think the color of my skin meant anything. I was a woman, and the women do not speak from the platform. Only men can do that. So after that's over, we go out to the cemetery, and I'm with this pastor, and he says to me, he says, "Will you do the prayer over the grave?" I'm like, "You didn't want me to talk up there. Now you want me to do the prayer over the grave?" And I said, "Well, why don't you do the prayer over the grave?" He says, "I can't do it because I don't have a church." Because a lot of pastors don't have churches. He says, "So you have to do it." So I thought, okay, I'll do it. So I do the prayer, and I'm thinking, I wonder how these people would know if this white, Jewish, Unity person who has never been baptized is saying the prayer. I can't say the prayer up on the platform, but I thought, I know that Nina is very happy. I'm thinking this pastor would be so upset if he knew who was doing that prayer. Because in their religion, that's a big thing. You have to have certain criteria to do certain things. So religion tends to be a little bit more specific and concise. But I want us to think about, since this is about Unity's values, is how we sometimes do the same thing. How we sometimes, even though we're Unity, and we are very free-thinking, and we believe all this really good stuff, how many times we say to somebody, like I wasn't a minister at the time, I was going to a church, I was teaching a class, and one of the women had broken her leg. And she came into church on Sunday, and someone said to her, "What in your consciousness caused you to break your leg?" Now, that's called metaphysical malpractice. You know, what in your... It's like, I tripped off a step. That's what caused me to break my leg. So how many times have we said to somebody, well, you know, you just have to think more positively or pray more positively, or you have to do this or you have to do that, when maybe all that person needs is someone to just listen. Someone to listen and hold a high watch for them. Someone to allow them to cry on their shoulder. Because they're not feeling spiritual and they're not feeling positive. And all they need is someone to allow them to be who they are, what they are, and where they are at the time. So I invite us, since spirituality is one of our values, to ask ourselves, are we living by this? Are we truly being spiritual beings in this world, being the most that we can be, that song that we sang, speaking from God, being from God, and all of that, even when it may be not something that's very Unity. So I invite you to close your eyes for a minute and ask yourself this. Do I live by the principles or what Unity says I need to believe? Or do I live from the heart? When someone comes to me, do I respond as just somebody who is New Thought or in Unity? Or do I respond as God's hands, feet, voice, ears, and heart on this earth? Sometimes in order to bring someone up, we have to meet them where they are. To be spiritual is not to believe in any set doctrines, any set rules, any set shoulds or whatever. It is to be a person who seeks a connection with something greater than themselves and allows that power to work through them, to carry it to someone else. God, help me to be your spirit here on this earth. For we know that God is love. And when we are love, we are God in flesh. And so we say, thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.